Listeners, burnout is not just exhaustion, it's a loss of meaning, a forgetting of beauty, a disconnection from what makes us feel alive. What if the future of wellness is not about doing more practices, but about decoding what the soul has been asking for all along? Welcome to Divine Decode, the space where we explore the deeper meaning behind modern challenges and translate lived experience into wisdom. I am your host, Pragya, and today I am joined by Hayley Hunter Hines, who is a globally recognized wellness futurist and the founder of Soul Sparkle Living. Hayley's work bridges science and soul, designing experiences, spaces, and rituals that move people from burnout into radiance. And in this episode, we are decoding the future of wellness and exploring how beauty, belonging, and embodiment are not luxuries but essential pathways back to wholeness. And with that, I welcome you to the show, Haley. It's such an honor hosting you today.
Thank you, Pragya. It's a pleasure to be here.
Same. And to start with, let's just form some context as of now. So, Haley, when you reflect on your decades of work in wellness, I'm curious, when did you first sense that burnout was not just a physical or mental issue, but a deeper spiritual signal? Because I feel this would set a tone for the listeners as well, and they might resonate and stick to it because, again, everybody of us, we go through this, and I want to know your journey through it.
Well, I think over the years we're taught to focus on, healthy eating and exercise and all the things that make a kind of a healthy lifestyle, right? But we don't always talk about the things that aren't as obvious. So, for example, making sure that you get really good sleep and making sure that you have really deep connections and soul friends and making sure that you're creating an environment that is conducive to calming and peaceful living. And I think that we underestimate how powerful those things are. And so for me, I have always been fascinated by not just what we would call like the biomedical model, meaning looking at people's blood pressure and body fat and, that type of thing, but also the factors that create those situations, right? So there's stress levels, anxiety, depression, etc., and also social connection and isolation, which is worse for you than smoking. So being isolated is just as bad as smoking. So kind of the fascination between all of those factors and how they impact your overall well-being really was a inspiration to me to dive deeper into what people are really struggling with. That's disconnection, loneliness. It's not even a lack of information anymore because I think, that's readily available. Everyone knows kind of what they should be eating and what they should be doing, but not necessarily um, making those habits sustainable and also not giving themselves time to rest and regulate and ground themselves. And so I think it's that kind of combination of all those pieces that have been such a huge part of my own journey. And I always practice everything kind of on myself. I'm the guinea pig. And then I bring that through to my clients and implement those kind of nuanced strategies. It's not as black and white. It's definitely nuanced based on situation and organization. But yeah, that's kind of where my passion lies is in the combination of all of the things that impact our overall well-being.
That was so beautiful. Thank you for that, Haley. And I'm sure the listeners, they probably would have, resonated with your journey. And we're glad that you shared that with us. Now, many people, they still see burnout as a personal failure or lack of resilience. So, from your perspective, what do we misunderstand about burnout when we don't look at it through a soul aware lens?
Well, I think that our cultures are not always set up to be conducive to uh, our optimal state of well-being, right? And I think depending on where people are in the world, Some places are much less likely to contribute to our wellness than others. So, for example, I live in Italy right now, and I'm able to go walk down the street and buy fresh produce off the cute little truck from the old man and make fresh, prepared, a nice meal for myself every day. I live right by the water, so I can take a long walk right by the sea. And it's just so peaceful and so calm and so quiet here. And on the flip side of that, I've also lived in major cities where traffic is crazy and it's wild and there's horns and it's exhaust and the air, is not clean and pure. And it's harder to get fresh produce. And so it's really, I think we are products of our environment, and we sometimes have to work a whole lot harder to be healthier based on where we live and where we do life. And so I would say if there's an opportunity to simplify, right? Either maintain or manage your environment a little bit more, um, grow your own food, make your own bread, like kind of go back to old school style living as much as possible. Keep things quiet, keep it calm as much as you can energetically in your house. I think that's going to contribute more to people's well being than they realize. And it doesn't even take a huge amount of stuff. It just takes some intentional effort to make those major changes that over time will really impact their overall well being in a really positive way.
That is so, so true. And it's so powerful to hear how, disconnection or what I feel when we talk about misalignment, initiation, disconnection. It's beautiful to know how all of that, just makes an amalgamation, like it comes into an amalgamation and then works for our lives differently. And thank you for sharing that with us again. Now let's say with that, so when you look beneath the surface of burnout, what deeper patterns do you see culturally or spiritually that have led us here? So because they're social beings, but we're also cultural beings, right? We're very much influenced by our culture, by our environment, by the spirituality which is, around us. So, what do you feel that? How do these patterns make their way in these places?
Well, I think that, we're each products, again, like I said, products of our environment. And the more that you can reduce the noise, the more you can reduce the connection to technology, right? If there's a way to kind of detox digitally on a regular basis, and it's just little things, right? It's not sleeping with your phone near your head in your room and being on the phone in the middle of the night. It's reviewing how your sleep habits can improve and making those small adjustments where you're sleeping really well. That's going to help you stay rested and grounded. And then it's releasing chemicals and garbage in your food that's going to help, again, stabilize your emotional well-being and decrease inflammation in your body. It's maybe filtering your water or your air. It's again, yeah, like you said, it's the amalgamation. It's those little things. If you just pay a little more attention and eliminate the things that create anxiety, stress, and dis-ease, and create more of an opportunity for peaceful, calm, nourishing energy, whether that be in the way you're nourishing yourself, the things you're watching on social media, the people that you're spending time with, right? So it's really being diligent and I would say relentless in the curation of the environment that is going to serve your highest and best. That's to me at the end of the day, we need to be relentless in the curation of what we want our life to look like and be very, very dedicated to eliminating anything that doesn't serve the highest and best.
Mm-hmm. I totally, totally agree with that. And it's so powerful again to hear how disconnection from body, rhythm, and beauty, it slowly erodes vitality even when life it looks successful on the outside, but then there's so much disconnection which takes place, and it just erodes away a lot of things. But then there are ways to come back to ourselves as well. And I want to know, how does this loss of radiance tend to show up in everyday life for individuals, leaders, or even the spaces we inhabit? So there are so many individual patterns. It might be the way you're speaking that, something is affecting your everyday life. So how are these patterns, or how is this loss reflected in our everyday lives?
Well, I think anytime you start to disconnect from nature and from yourself, right? And then it's just a matter of time before you find you're so far off the path, you're not sure how to get back. And so I think very simply grounding in nature as much as you can. And again, that depends on where you are in the world. But the more you can be outside, the more you can be near water, the more you can be near, trees, grass, whatever it may be, the more time you can spend outside in nature is going to be probably one of the most healing things you can do. The next thing I would say is get into a biorhythm of where you're paying attention to when you're going to sleep at night, when you're waking up, getting on a schedule to where you can stay in a routine. The research shows that that's one of the easiest things you can do to amplify your health is to go to bed at the same time every night or within about 30 minutes to an hour, right? So it's consistency in the sleeping. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. And then those little daily habits, right? So it's meditation, it's regular movement, it's the things that may not seem like a big deal at the time, but when you string them all together over a period of time and you're consistent, then at some point you wake up and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I feel amazing and I love how I look and I feel rested." And you find yourself a lot more calm and loving in your relationships. You probably are less reactive, more responsive. You're a better partner, person, parent, leader. If you really prioritize your well-being, you show up differently in the world and you amplify so much more light when you care for your body as if it's a temple, like it's sacred, and if you treat it that way, people feel that. And you also become a much more magnetic person. So if that's part of your kind of mission, then why wouldn't you take time to care for yourself so that way you can show up for the world in the highest and best way?
That is so, so true and lovely. It is. That insight, it feels so embodied. Thank you for that. And I want to know that your Sparkle framework, it brings together bio, psycho, social, and spiritual dimensions for someone listening who feels depleted. Or what is a gentle way to begin reconnecting with radiance without overwhelming themselves?
So based on that framework, right? So it's the biometrics, so making sure that your numbers are in alignment. And then it's the psychological factors, so managing your stress, making sure that again you're getting good sleep, you're having great conversations, and you are managing as much of the external factors as you can. The social piece, which is a huge thing that I'm talking about right now, is around real connection and real community, and the fact that I think in 2020 um, it rewired us and not in a good way, right? And we became so much more used to being on our own by ourselves or disconnected socially without physical touch, without connection. And I think that has lingered with us for all these years. And I think that is a shift that is happening. And if people are really interested in making significant changes this year in their well-being, I would say deepening the relationships and the connections you have in your community is a really, really powerful way to restore well-being that can actually be super fun and easy, right? If you let it be. And the research actually shows that social isolation is worse for you than smoking. So that's a really, really big issue that we need to focus on, I think, in 2026 and beyond is the depth of conversation, the depth of connection and community. And then a spiritual connection, right? So whatever that looks like for anyone that's listening, it's not one way or the other, but it's just a knowing that there is a higher power, there is something beyond us, and allowing yourself to have a state of gratitude and a love and an eminence of that is also a very, very important factor in affecting your risk factors as well. So it's interesting because all of those other things, the psychological, the social, the spiritual, all impact the biomedical pieces, right? So it's not just enough to eat healthy and exercise. You need to have the balance of the other pieces as well in order to truly amplify your well-being in the way that will take it to the next level.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That is so so true, and I loved how you said that in 2026 there are better things to focus on communication, on connecting with people and connecting with ourselves, and I love how invitational that feels, and I feel restoring wonder and awe as nourishment is something that we need and not just as indulgence. And that is what I take away from you today. And as people begin to awaken their vitality, old patterns can still pull them back, right? So, how do you support individuals in sustaining radiance without slipping into pressure or perfectionism?
Well, I think you touched on it, and that's actually the last piece of the framework is the sparkle, right? And so once we kind of align all of those other pieces where we've got people on a more wholesome, whole food based, maybe eating plan, maybe we've got them on more of a mindful movement activity, whether it be yoga or whatever they've even just walking is wonderful for health. And then we've gotten their relationships back in alignment where they're connected deeply, where we've got them on some kind of spiritual practice where they're deeply connected every day in some way, whatever that looks like. Then that is what we lead into is the sparkle. And that, like you said, is the awe, the wonder, the magic, the miracles, the ability to be almost like a child again, right? Where it's like you can laugh and have fun and be light, and almost that effervescence comes back, the joy and the fun, because again, life can be really heavy. The world can be really crazy. And when we allow ourselves to live from that place of just excitement and enthusiasm, that is what lifts us into that state of true radiance. And so it it is a little bit of a structure, and sometimes it does take a little bit of time, but at the end of the day, if you're really committed to doing life differently, there is a step-by-step process you can follow, and it's not rocket science, it's just the, ability to be so committed that you really, really would wanna make change in your life, and that you're willing to do what you need to do to release what no longer serves you in order to step into a new way of being, which is super exciting.
That is lovely, and that perspective brings such grace. Radiance is, you know, not something which can be forced, right? It's something that we allow and tend. And for our listeners, I'll offer this reflection that if your burnout was a message from your soul, what truth might it be asking you to finally honor? Please introspect on that, and I hope that gives you some answer. And Haley, for listeners who feel called to explore your work, your spaces, or the Sparkle framework more deeply, where can they find you?
So, they can always find me on my website at soulsparkleliving.com. They can email me, Haley at soulsparkleliving.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram with my full name, Hayley Hunter Hines. So they can find me there as well.
Thank you for joining us on Divine Decode. If this conversation resonated, allow yourself to notice where light is asking you to soften, reconnect, and remember what truly nourishes you. Sometimes the decode is not about learning something new, but about returning to what your soul has always known. Until next time.